You would think for a 24-year-old that I'd be a little more tech savvy, but here we are.
Sorry, I was struggling just as much as you are.
Jared with MMA Island here, and today I'm joined by 4-2 welterweight prospect Billy Goff, who is on a 2-fight win streak. He's got 2 wins under the Bellator banner, including a knockout win over Hobson Gracie last December. And Billy, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Dude, I like that T-shirt. That's pretty sweet.
Thanks. I got it. Bellator, they give out a bunch of shirts every time you fight for them, and this is one of them. I love it.
Did you compete at an event that they had in Hawaii, or was it just like they hook you up with?
Yeah, that one was just wrapped up in the package. I don't know why.
For sure, no questions asked. Cool T-shirt, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'd love to compete in Hawaii though. That'd be fun.
Yeah, no doubt, dude. No doubt. You know, Max Holloway is constantly advocating for that one. But all right, man. So what's going on today? Is this like a normal training day for you? I know you work a traditional job as well. Kind of what does today look like for you?
So I had to leave early today for the meeting. But I was at work this morning. I usually, like, during the week, it's normally I go to work, I go home. Sometimes I go to the gym before practice. And then I go to practice at 7:30, usually at night. Yeah. So tonight I'll be there. Tonight's grappling.
For sure. Cool. So it's a full schedule for you. That's pretty constant, huh?
Yeah. Right now it's not, since I just had a fight, things aren't as strict. Like, so I'll take a night here and there if something comes up. Like if I want to hang out with a friend, then it's like, all right, I'm not gonna be in tonight. But it's slowly more and more, and then eventually I'll stop. Then I won't take any nights off.
Yeah. So Billy, you're 4-2 as a pro fighter now, and those first 4 professional fights you had all took place in 2019. So I'm sure that grind that you were just describing was pretty constant. Like it seems like you would have to go from training camp to fight to training, like pretty constant for that entire year. Was that the case?
Pretty much. It's it's being able to fight that much really helps a lot when you like don't get any injuries or don't get hurt. And it makes it easier because then you can just bounce back. Sometimes it's not the best thing because I had 2 losses in a row that I probably should have waited after the first one just to kind of get my head a little more level. But it was nonstop. Like, all right, after like 1 or 2 weeks of healing, then it's right back to full sprint.
Yeah. So now that you're riding 2 consecutive wins, in hindsight, do you feel like with these last 2 fights, having had about a year off, not a year off, but a year without competition in between those fights, do you think that has maybe contributed to, you know, your more recent success?
It's definitely played a part, especially with COVID and everything, that whole break. I was able to, like, we got a new jiu-jitsu coach. We got more people at our gym. And it was just more time for me to train, for me to get in like the right place mentally. And when you're away from it longer, you're a little more hungry for it. Just because it's like, I haven't done it in a while and you want to get back in there. Yeah. So it played a part, and it was definitely beneficial. Like, obviously there's people who get ring rust. So waiting too long can be hurtful. So it's a balancing.
Right. And then like the more time you're waiting between fights, there's more opportunity to get injured and to almost overthink that upcoming fight. And so when you're in the groove of constantly fighting, it definitely has some benefit because you have that momentum to ride as well.
Yeah. And it's just a give and take. So it depends on what works for you at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So you just had a recent win on July 10th with the Cage Titans promotion. Tell me how you're feeling.
I'm feeling good. There's no, like, I walked away pretty cleanly. There wasn't, like, I had some bruising, but other than that, there weren't any injuries. I was dealing with some injuries during the camp, so I'm addressing those now.
Good. Yeah.
But other than that, I feel really good, and I'm excited. It's just coming off of 2 wins. Hitting those 2 losses in a row weren't fun. So
Sure not. So yeah, that's interesting now because you went 4-2 as an amateur, correct? And
Yes, sir.
now you find yourself 4-2 again as a professional fighter, and your last two fights were wins, two pretty dominant wins. And so I would imagine that you're feeling pretty good, like you've rebuilt this momentum, only it's different now because you're on the big stage, you're doing it as a professional, and you're doing it against good competition. And so as you're thinking about next steps and thinking about getting another fight under your belt potentially this year, kind of where's your head at?
So right now I'm dealing with or not so much dealing with, I'm addressing some stuff that had happened during the camp.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have as quick of a turnaround as possible, but that isn't always the smart thing to do. So I'm just that's all up in the air right now. I want to keep the momentum going, especially with eyes on me. Like if I take too much time off, then there won't be as many people watching me, and then the things I can get after my next fight won't be as big.
Sure.
So I would like to fight for Bellator as well, again, because they pay more money.
Right. Yeah. Bigger name, bigger promotion, like you said, more eyes.
Yeah.
So with because you've got two fights in 3 different promotions, and so with 2 wins in Bellator, particularly a really big one, which I'm going to bring up here in a second because I'm sure a lot of people have come to you and are continuously bringing up this win because it's relatively recent still. And I'll actually just kind of dive into that now. In last December, you had a pretty big win over Robson Gracie. And as many of us know, the Gracie name is virtually synonymous with mixed martial arts. So previously undefeated Robson Gracie, kind of walk me through what you're feeling after that fight, getting back into the winning column and defeating a guy who comes from that sort of lineage.
It was an honor to fight somebody. I mean, you don't get too many opportunities to fight a Gracie. So you never say no to that because it's a great opportunity regardless. So that was a blast. And like, if people look at the lineage of Gracie's, obviously I wasn't fighting Hoist, but it's
Sure.
still a big thing for a lot of people. Like my coach was very happy, and like there was people who, and also fighting against, because he had Henzo in his corner, so that was a big thing for my coach as well. For my coach, it's basically my coach going up against Henzo, right. And so that was big, and that was like just enjoyable to feel afterwards. And coming on, it was having 2 losses in a row was not great for the morale. So bouncing back, especially on a big name, it was like, all right, it's like we're in the right spot.
Yeah. It's a pretty big test mentally and just for your experience and where you are in your career. So now having 2 wins under the Bellator banner, was taking this last fight with Cage Titans just a matter of timing and wanting to remain active? Because after such a big win in Bellator against Robson, I imagine the long-term goal is to kind of remain consistent fighting under the same promotion, ideally with Bellator.
Yeah, like so for fighting outside of Bellator, I mostly just want to fight for titles. Or a fight that will get me a title fight, 1 or 2 fights outside of it to get a title. It's something that's going to make my name, my name bigger. It's going to make my record bigger. So I want to fight people who have a big name, people who are tough opponents. It's going to make me look better. So it was more so because I was talking to Bellator after that fight, and I was trying to get a fight. And they had offered me one guy in April, but he took somebody else, and then they didn't have anybody else for me. So it was mostly trying to stay active. But I was still happy. I wouldn't have taken a slouch just to stay active. So I was happy to get a tough opponent and be able to stay active at the same time.
That makes sense. So you've been a professional fighter for 2 years now. And even thinking about your amateur career, you only started in 2017. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
November 2017.
Okay. And you're 23 years old?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how does it feel to be getting a little bit of spotlight and to have this, you know, positive forward momentum at such an early stage in your career?
It's funny because I feel like I could be going quicker. Like with COVID, taking time off, there was a good chunk of time where there was no fighting. And I could have started earlier, but most people I fight are always a significant amount older than me, and realistically, like I feel like I'm pretty ahead of the game age-wise and like competition-wise. So it gives me comfort, especially knowing it's like, all right, I have more wiggle room, because people who are in their 30s, it's like, all right, well, your time is more limited than mine is. It's like I've got a lot more years to keep doing this.
Right.
So I can time and get better. And it's like I'm not even in my prime yet. Like I'm years from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that brings a lot of comfort.
So do you find that is more of a positive, like that's something that I find myself thinking about when you look at almost like two different generations colliding, when you've got a guy who's at the very beginning of his career and a guy who's maybe at the tail end. And so has that ever been a weird mental block for you as like someone who is transitioning from like their teenage years? I mean, you're 23 now, but going from your teenage years into adulthood, and then you find yourself fighting a grown man. Has that ever been a weird mental, roadblock for you? Or do you draw excitement and motivation from it, knowing that like, okay, I just kind of put a beat down on this grown man, and also like I'm still growing and evolving as a fighter?
Yeah, definitely. It makes me excited because it's like I've fought at least 3 or 4 people who were balding. It's like, damn, dude, I'm fighting. Like when you talk about like man strength, and like you're in your prime. I'm fighting the best that you could be, and you're taking me 8 years before I'm at my best. So and knowing that I'm still doing well, and knowing that I can compete. Like I've never, even out of all my losses, I've never fought anybody that I didn't think I was like, because any given day you can lose. So just match up that day, how you're feeling, all kinds of things happen, getting caught. I've never fought someone and was like, oh man, like I don't have an answer for this. Like I don't know what I'm doing. Like yeah, I can do this. So having that at my age, especially people who have been like, when I fought Cameron and he just recently was on the Ultimate Fighter. So I've got so much potential at such a young age fighting all these other people, that when I get to that point, I know what it's going to be like fighting someone my age. If there's any, there always usually is 1 or 2.
Right. Yeah. Well, and then like you have to think that like your body's not done developing, and even you in particular, you started your career at 155. Now you're at 170, and so I've heard you mention that some people say that you should go back down to 155, and you seem pretty adamant about staying at 170. And so when you think about how young you are in your career, you're going to fill out, you're going to adjust and adapt to this new weight class. And we're finding, especially with certain guys, they perform better at a weight that is more natural to them. And this is something, you've got a folk style wrestling background. You wrestled in high school. And so you know how much it wears on you to cut weight and to not be in peak physical shape going into competition. And so when you're having to not, put so much wear and tear on your body, it definitely benefits you in some ways, in a lot of ways. And even with TJ Dillashaw, we're hearing all of these interviews this week about how he was anemic going into the Cejudo fight down at 125 because his body was telling him no. And so, yeah, for sure. He was a shell of himself. And so it is pretty exciting to kind of forecast your potential when thinking about how much experience you're going to develop and how much your body is going to continue to adjust to this weight class.
Yeah, I would love. I'm holding out hope for a growth spurt so that I can get a little taller and go up to 185.
You and me both, man. You and me both. Right.
I think we're past it now.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Until we're out of our 20s,
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah. So, and I'm trying to and I also don't think that I'm never going to look like Kamaru Usman at 170, just because I can't put on too much more weight and have an easy cut at 170.
Right.
Like I'm going to have to start adjusting a lot more, and I'll have to start being a lot more strict diet wise. Cause I walk around at like 185, 190.
Okay.
And I don't look it. I think it's mostly in the legs.
Lean.
Yeah. I don't have huge arms, I'm just not a huge dude upper body wise. But even I had some coworkers tell me my last opponent looked like he was 50 pounds heavier than me, which didn't feel good.
But it's good. But when you think about it, it's almost better that you have the opportunity to fill out and put on weight in a way that's kind of slow and incremental and a little more natural. If you look at when you look at Kamaru Usman in high school and college, he looked like not much different than how he looks now. He's fine tuning and he's maybe put on a little bit of muscle. But we have the bodies that we have, and you just kind of have to find a way to use it to your advantage,
Exactly. And I've never had an issue. I've never been muscled around in the cage. I've never fought someone who was like, oh man, you are a lot stronger than me. I can't handle this. So I have to work around it. It's never been that way. Even my last opponent, I felt like I was decently stronger than him. I felt like I had a pretty good advantage strength wise. And I feel like most people my weight, I have a strength advantage over. And a lot of that is also because of wrestling technique and using your strength in the right ways. So I don't feel like I have to put on too much more size, too much more weight for 170. So I'm happy with where I'm at, honestly.
Yeah. When you've got that Habib grip, man, you don't need to look big. You just have to be strong.
Yeah, just gotta smash.
Just smash. Exactly. This is Billy time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for someone who is maybe just now discovering you and they see a guy who's young, 4-2, has a win over a Gracie, what reason would you give someone to invest in you and put stock in the name Billy Goff?
If you just look at my record and look at the people I've fought, it's never been, I don't take slouches. I don't take gimme fights. There was a fighter on my last card who was 15 and 90 something. And it was just it was ridiculous. And he had UFC vets, Colby Covington was on his record at one point. They had fought, and Colby Covington's getting somewhere off of not padding his record entirely, because he's in the UFC now. He's not fighting anybody. He's padding his record. But at any point, I've never done that. I've never taken an easy fight. Every fight's I'm gonna either win or learn from it, and I want to go down as one of the best who's ever done it. So if we'll either get in early or get in late.
Right. But the important thing is that they hop on the Billy train at some point.
Yes.
So kind of along those same lines, when people hear your name, what do you want them to think of when they hear Billy Goff? When that day comes and you find yourself back on the Bellator stage or one day fighting in the UFC, when someone looks and they see that Billy Goff is fighting on this, weekend's card, how do you want them to react to that? What do you want them to think of, and why should they get excited?
I would love for them to just be excited for a brutal fight. If I could if I could be represented the best, my preferred way to be represented from fans is just like be just as brutal of a fighter as you can get. Like, I don't like the idea so much of being called tough, because that means you eat a lot of shots, and right. I don't really want. But I don't let off the gas. I'm always in their face, and I'm always throwing just like I got tons of elbows, tons of takedowns, knees, everything, and I'm just constantly in your face, and I'm constantly trying to hurt you, and just keeping the pace at a level that nobody else can keep up with. And no matter what fight it is, when they tune in, I'm going to be giving it my all to smash them and just put on as brutal a fight as I could.
All right. So obviously you had a couple of consecutive losses in 2019. How much do you feel like you've improved since then?
Astronomically, especially with my having so much time since those. I've been able to, like, the adjustments that I needed to make mentally and like in my personal life to give myself the best advantage for fighting, I've made. And having a new jiu-jitsu coach, so like I used to not care about submissions. It was always position, so I could just hit people. But now, like, I'm going to grappling tournaments. Now I'm going to open mats, and I'm actually going after submissions, and I'm actually opening up a new part of my game that I never really cared as much about before. And so it's just I've evolved as a fighter in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So talk to me a little more about this new jiu-jitsu coach and how much of an impact you think that has had on your grappling game, because obviously you come from a folk style wrestling background, and I'm sure that I know that it translates well to jiu-jitsu and really any form of combat grappling. But as we both know, those two styles are vastly different. And so how did that change come about with starting to work with a new jiu-jitsu coach, and when did that change happen?
So it was during COVID, because there was a neighboring gym that had closed down because of COVID. So some of their guys and their jiu-jitsu coach came over and started training with us, and they've been there since. So they've been there for a little over a year. I had my fight scheduled for Hobson the first time in March, and I think they had come around January. So I had a couple months with them. And then when it got canceled a few times, it took me about 7 months or so, 8 months to actually fight him. So that whole time I was training, and my coach loves heel hooks. So it's like just seeing very good heel hooks constantly. And that's Neiman Gracie trains with Hobson a lot, and that's basically his game plan. So it was a huge advantage going into that fight, knowing that it's like, all right, I basically got to drill against someone better than you for the last 8 months. It's like I've come so far grappling wise that I'm not as worried about you throwing up submissions. Now I'm confident that I can go to the ground with anybody, and I could go toe to toe. Obviously, I'm not a black belt, but I can go toe to toe in an MMA fight grappling wise, because we also have strikes, and my wrestling is going to play more of a role here. So that whole process of him coming over, him staying and training out was just a huge benefit, because like my main coach, Dexter, he's very good at jiu-jitsu, but he grew up wrestling as well. So he has a wrestling jiu-jitsu mindset, whereas this coach was just purely jiu-jitsu. So it's good to have that perspective of just jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but yeah, by the same token, to the point that you were just making, it's just as good to have somebody who knows how to mix the two. And it's sometimes knowing how to blend two styles of martial arts is just as important as being particularly good at one of those styles, because you can learn jiu-jitsu, you can learn how to box, you can be experienced in Muay Thai and have that wrestling background, but to be able to blend everything together, I don't feel like that's discussed enough. And I'm not speaking from experience, but I can just imagine how much different it is thinking about how you mix everything together, but even just like knowing how to transition between your striking and your takedowns and your takedown defense, and mixing everything together seems a whole lot harder in reality than it is to theorize.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what sets people apart. If like people who switch stances, people who like, if you can switch stances into your striking, into your wrestling, who can, like, if I can mix in my fakes, because like once I take you down once, every time I fake a shot, you have to respect it. So now I can use that to strike. Every time I go for a submission, you have to deal with that submission. So now I can use that to hit you. And now it's just, you're getting hit from every single angle possible. And at all times it's a threat. So now you have more things to worry about than I do. Whereas when we're standing, it's like, I know that you're not good enough. You have good wrestling, but you have to stop striking. You can't do both. So if you can blend those, and if you look at people like top guys in the UFC, the best ones, they blend what they do. They don't do just one. It's not one trick ponies anymore.
Right. And when thinking about, because you're fighting out of Connecticut, have you ever, or would you be interested in training with some of those guys at welterweight, like, you know, Sean Brady, Mickey Gall? Have you had a chance to work with any of those guys?
No, I've never had I've cross-trained, like I've trained with Nick Newell.
Okay.
For a few years, actually. It's because he's in Connecticut, so it's easier to get out there, but I would love to go travel and train with people. Yeah. The options just, it's I mean, I don't know how it all works because I've never done it before. So like, I don't know if I hit up other people like, hey, can I come train with you for a week?
Why not?
You want to come out train with us for a week? Right. But I would love to. I'd love to go to DC's gym out in California.
Oh, that'd be fun. Cool. That would be. Yeah. All right. So Daniel Cormier, if you're listening to this, come get some work with our boy Billy Goff. And that goes for anyone out there. I'm sure there's a lot of people who would be willing to and excited to train with somebody who's coming up in their career. And like, a lot of these guys seem really cool, and I'm sure they'd be quite receptive to you reaching out to them as well. So that might be a good opportunity.
Yeah, I've never thought about it, but it is a good idea.
Okay. So when you think about, you know, fantasy or bucket list matchups for that point in your career when you know, you're maybe on the big stage or a bigger stage, are there any names that come to mind for you?
Well, so Kamaru Usman's the best in the world right now.
Sure. Yeah, right.
I would
undisputed.
Yeah. So, but I can't. I mean, realistically, I mean, he's already talked about retiring here and there. So I couldn't get to the UFC quick enough for him to still be there.
Right.
So I don't think that one would ever happen. Obviously, like fighting GSP and stuff like that, it would be an honor. When I think about like getting there, I want to, like, when I get to the UFC, I'd love to climb Bellator, take Bellator's belt, and then go to the UFC, or potentially go to one, take their belt, then go to the UFC, and just do something that nobody else has done before, like a lineal promotion champ. Nobody's ever done that before. There's people out there trying to do it,
right?
And they've already got some belts. They're a little more ahead than I am, but at the end of when I think of like a fantasy fight, like a picture perfect fight, fighting somebody like Paul Felder, like someone who's just gonna go to war with you, like, and no matter, like, you guys are just gonna leave broken, but you're gonna leave everything out there, and that's my ideal kind of fight. That at the end, like, when I get to the top, and it's like, all right, now it's more for legacy. Like, that's a legacy for me.
Yeah, because you're getting the experience of leveling up after going through something, after going through war, and experiencing a new level of being drug into the deep end. And also, those are the fights that everybody talks about and that we remember years and years and years after the fact.
Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald.
Yeah, Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin, Diego Sanchez and Clay Guida, Poirier, Max Holloway, you know,
Yep.
Adesanya and Gastelum. And I have no doubt that one day it'll be Billy Goff, and who knows by then.
Somebody good.
Somebody good. Somebody exciting. So Billy, for the sake of time, I've got just one more question for you, man. And I'm sure this is one that a lot of people are interested in. How soon can we expect you back in the cage?
So it depends on I've gotten a couple offers already. It's up in the air right now. The earliest is I'm thinking is probably late August, September. So relatively quickly, depending on how things go.
All right.
But it's nothing set for sure right now.
Cool. That sounds promising to me. So hopefully we'll be seeing you in there sometime soon, if not at least before the end of the year. Billy, do you have a message to anyone out there, your fans, any shout outs or anything that you'd like to give?
Yeah, so follow my page, Billy Goff, on Instagram. You can watch my whole journey. Post as much as I could. Follow my team's page, Team Dexter Valley Tudo. We've got a few other up and coming fighters. We've got 3 other amateur fighters out of there, and they're gonna be making big moves as well. You get to see things from my coaches, some of the best coaches around. If anybody out there that wants to cross train, wants to come down to my gym, I'm willing to travel too. But other than that, I just keep tuning in because it's only gonna get better from here.
Love it. Well, Billy, dude, you're awesome. I'm excited to see where your career goes. Thank you again so much for taking the time today, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the future.
Thanks
All
for
right,
having
brother.
me.
Take it easy.
You too.